So hello everyone. Today is Wednesday, 13th of April, and this is the Cluster API office hour meetings. Before starting, some general instructions. So meeting notes are shared in a Google Doc. Let me paste this in the chat. If you want to get access to the Google Doc, you have to join the SIG Cluster Lifecycle mailing list. Also, we have a meeting etiquette for this meeting. You have to use the raise hand feature of Zoom before speaking, and I will do my best to follow everyone and give everyone a room. If you want if you have some topic that you want to talk about, feel free to edit the agenda and other new topics. The agenda is divided in two. So we have the first part for general topic, and then we have a second part for provider updates. Last but not least, as a group, we abide to the CNCF code of conduct, so be kind of with each other. So let's start by today's agenda, and as usual, we welcome new attendees. If there is someone that is new to this meeting and want to introduce himself to the audience, feel free to speak up. Okay, I don't see hand raised. Let's move on. So, open proposal readouts. Is there someone that want to give an update on an open proposal? Yuvaraji.
Hi, I just wanted to bring up that we have a proposal for the cluster API runtime hooks for add-on management. This is the one that's built on top of runtime SDK. We're still looking for reviews, so if anyone can provide feedback and review the Google Doc, that would be greatly appreciated. And depending on the feedback that we get there, we are planning to open a PR for this towards the end of the week. That's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Hey, about the machine pool machines, we got some really great feedback this week from you, Fabrizio and Alberto and Shyam, and thank you very much. I think we have good answers to everything, and I'll probably finish updating today. And just thanks everybody for taking a look at it. I think it's moving forward. That's all.
Thank you, Matt. If I may add something to this, for the IBAN proposal with Jacob, we started a thread, and probably next week we are going to have a focused meeting trying to help in moving the proposal over the line, so to resolve the biggest of comments. So if you want to do the same for other proposal, I'm up for deep dive and try to help as much as possible everyone else.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
And
let me see how it goes over the next couple of days, and maybe we should schedule that.
Okay, thank you. And yes, Yassine is writing in chat that is going to add it to the agenda some notes about the meeting for the IPAM proposal. Next one is Jack, if I'm not wrong.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to just add a brief comment about the add-on orchestration proposal. So that was your proposal initially, Fabrizio. So Fabrizio and Jonathan and myself had a really great conversation on Friday about the state of this and what's left to fill out in terms of the proposal. And so we're going to start getting more, Jonathan and myself are going to start getting more involved there. I started to add some little micro suggestions to the proposal, and I'll continue to do that along with Jonathan's help and with Fabrizio's support. And so yeah, this is going to be, I think, much more active in the coming weeks. And then I also wanted to share an outcome of that conversation, which is that Jonathan and I are actively prototyping something in a MVP-like way to partly continually inform how this proposal might end up, and also to explore the idea of implementing this outside of Cluster API itself, at least initially, as a way of sort of unblocking functional demos and just making us materially feel like we're making progress. So if anyone is interested in this proposal, please, in addition to Fabrizio, feel free to hit myself, Jack Francis, or Jonathan Tong up on Slack. Comment on the proposal. I think that there are eyeballs on it right now, so we'll see those comments fairly actively. I think that's it. And I put a note in the, I put an agenda item for this. So when it comes to that, please feel free to skip over this.
Thank you, Jay. Just adding a little remark. So the idea of the MVP is just a way to move fast, explore problem, and also a way to give to give feedback to the community as frequent as we can about the direction. So the MVP is just a way to explore, is not a way to steer away from the community.
100%.
And
in fact, if we find ourselves getting community engagement from the MVP, that would be wonderful. So
great. If there are no questions about the Cluster API add-on orchestration proposal, let's move on to Christian.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to add here that we moved the Cluster API state metrics proposal to a pull request. We also added a point at the agenda. More on this then when we go to the agenda, I think.
Okay, so we will get to this data. Some other update. I see Jack with the his hand still raised. Is from before? Or... Okay, so okay, let's move on with the agenda then. So first one is Christian with Cluster API state metrics.
Yeah, as I said, we moved it to a pull request. We're happy to receive reviews. The TLDR is it will be a new component in the experimental directory at the Cluster API repository. And initially, we want to do or implement it using an opt-in mechanism. So maybe, yeah, for being able to enable it using the tilt configuration like doing for Prometheus or the logging extension. Yeah, we will also have to then figure out how to or where to push the new image to and so on. Yeah. I don't know if there's some idea. This thing is will be experimental. Will be isolated from the core copy stuff. So we're not hitting any issues here. It will have its separate Go module because it will have some dependencies from Cube state metrics. So we don't mix up things there. Yeah.
Thank you, Christian. Is there some comment? Okay, since no, I just echo mine. I'm really looking forward to get this soon. I don't see blocker because basically what Christian is proposing is something which is separated from everything else. And as soon as we have this in, we will basically quickly achieve to make metrics available for all Cluster API developers using Tilt, And also we will provide instruction on how to install for the wider community. And so we basically, this will trigger hopefully a nice feedback loop that will drive the next step of this effort. So thank you very much. I kindly ask Cecile, Vince, or Alberto, or the other maintainer to take a look and see if we can unblock this work, given that it is isolated and it has a lot of value.
So maybe to highlight what the next steps would be as soon as the proposal got merged, the folks at Mercedes-Benz will then create a pull request to contribute their existing implementation to the experimental directory, with some cleanups and fixes, of course, to match the proposal, and then follow up pull requests will, for example, implement machine health check metrics, which we added to the proposal, which the component currently does not have implemented. So yeah, to match the proposal then afterwards.
Thank you. This is great. Really looking forward to see this moving. So if there are no questions for Christian, we can move to the next point, which is Iromu. I hope to pronounce it well.
Yes, that's correct pronunciation. Thank you. And I'm quite new for this community, so should I introduce myself briefly?
Feel free to.
Okay, I'm Hiromu Asahina from NTT in Japan. We are a telecommunication company, and we are now planning to use Cluster API for managing cluster. And we want, as I wrote here, we want to deploy the same applications which uses hardware acceleration features running on different platforms like AWS or OpenStack, etc. And the problem for us is we want, as I said, we want to use hardware acceleration, but there, it seems platform-specific configuration, like a URLs I put here. So we want to integrate these kind of steps into a common interface. So what I want to ask today is, does such goal match to the goal of this community? I mean, if I will propose such features to Class API, is it feasible for you all, or it's unreasonable? Please tell me your opinion.
Someone want to answer? Yassine, maybe.
Yeah. I think in general, device management in Cluster API has always been something where we're lagging a bit, like either networks, like network cards, or like for GPUs. But for GPUs, it is a bit harder because there's definitely there are definitely differences between how it's done on-prem and in public cloud. Especially when we think about public cloud, like you have to choose the instance type, and that's like very much what you have to do, where in on-prem you have to deal with nuances such as do you want your GPU to be consumed through PCI pass-through? Do you want like your GPU to be virtualized and such? So I think it might be hard to to find a common abstraction, but yeah, if you have an idea or something, totally welcome to read an issue and comment on it.
Oh, so let me confirm. Let me just confirm. The direction, whole direction of my proposal is not conflicting with your direction, right?
So, like,
I mean, it's hard, but it's not unreasonable.
Hiromu, I'm curious, are you looking to have like a common way to deploy clusters where like you can specify having some sort of accelerated hardware that's a layer above the infrastructure machine templates? Like what are you trying to achieve out of this?
Just sorry, I don't get it. What does it mean layer?
Well, so I'm trying to understand, so right now, if you want to have accelerated hardware support for a given platform, the actuator for that platform, whether it's AWS or GCP, needs to have that acceleration added to it specifically. So I think if you're interested in adding acceleration for specific hardwares to each of the different actuators, that's definitely in line with what the project is doing. And I'm sure people would appreciate those type of things. I was trying to understand, were you asking for an API layer above the infrastructure machine template, or are you okay with defining, separate machine templates for each cluster, each provider that you're deploying?
I get it. I accept separated template. I mean, like a one option we thought is adding the option to client cluster CTL to enable GPU features for each provider, so that the cluster CTL can make a YAML file manifest which enables GPU features corresponding to each platform.
Okay, that makes sense. So like when I create a template using cluster CTL, I could tell it, I want GPUs enabled, and I want you to make a template for AWS and for GCP and for whatever else, and then it will generate those things for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
That can be an option.
So I mean, that would necessarily involve, I think, putting some specific logic into the cluster CTL templating engine, so that it could know how to do the specific thing for each provider. That I think is where it might start to get complicated.
Yes. So, is there any idea about that?
Let's continue. Then I will comment on this one. So next one is Cecilia, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I think this is not talking specifically about GPU. I've actually heard similar feedback from users before, that cluster API, it kind of falls short of allowing you to fully not care about infrastructure, because you still need that platform specific knowledge of knowing what VM sizes you need, if you need that number of cores in different cloud providers, how that is different on-prem, etc. You still need to have some platform specific knowledge and configure those machine types specifically in the infrastructure provider CRDs. And then there might be some inconsistencies in how those configurations work across providers. So for example, GPU, I think it works a bit differently in CAPZ versus Kappa. So I think this might not be an easy thing to solve that we can just open a PR for, but if we're thinking long term, it would be, really cool if we thought about how we can maybe abstract this another layer and have some sort of way that you can, as a user, just describe what you want and say, I want this type of machine, that many machines, I want GPU enabled, and then kind of you don't need to know the specifics of what VM size you need for that, and the providers kind of just give you what you need. That would be something really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Isin?
Yeah, I guess like in the very, very short term, like if you want to have something like that, like an option can be to rely on various flavors for like all the providers, and then you can select the GPU flavors depending on the platform you want. As in, like in general, like yeah, I kind of agree that we are falling short, like in general, like for device management in Cluster API.
Mike?
Yeah, so I guess I'm thinking about this from kind of like the user experience perspective and the cluster CTL angle. Like, given that if this was to be centralized in like something like cluster CTL, because every provider could have a difference in the way they do this, I think it would be a difficult, thing to maintain from that perspective. But I'm wondering if we've thought about the notion of maybe having like cluster CTL plugins, or allowing individual providers to have some way to opt into behavior like this, so that a user might be able to do something, like specify these kind of cluster class, or these high level constraints from the command line. I don't have an answer per se. I'm just asking questions, I guess.
I let Yassine to speak, and then I want to say something on this one, but I don't have a raise hand. So
that's another one.
Okay. So first of all, Iramo, thank you for coming here. This is definitely the right place to have those discussions. And I think that there are 2 points in your request and in the feedback that we have. So first one is that we can do better in having consistency across providers. And this is a discussion that Yassine is kind of driving, and we would like to have. So if we notice difference, which are across providers that are not justified by the underlying infrastructure, just design choice made by the different team, and there is room for harmonizing stuff, is let's raise the point, and we are always looking to improve and become more consistent as a ecosystem. This is the first point. Second point, and yeah, just for reference, we discussed this, I don't know, for the control plane endpoint recently, and GPU and could be another point. With regard to a possible solution for now, I will remind, there was someone added this in the chat as well. So we have another option today, which is a cluster class and managed topology. I don't know if you are aware of this feature, but I invite you to take a look. With cluster class, basically there is now separation between the person that defines the template and the cluster. So there is, you already have a layer that allows you to create clusters in a different on different infrastructure that they look almost the same, and all the infrastructure specific detail are kind of hidden in the cluster class. What you can do, for instance, is to create some cluster variables that drives the type of device that you want, and make this variable the same across all the infrastructure types. It is kind of complex. I will link to the document, the documentation, but it is also really powerful. And this reminds me an idea that we were discussing with some colleagues recently, about having, for instance, a set of cluster variable which are shared across provider, or a common variables that everyone use. I make an example. If you want to define a variable for CNI, we can define one and write this type somewhere in a separate repository or in the cluster API book. And so everyone should not reinvent a variable for CNI. It is a common problem. And we can do the same also for, I don't know, machine size or for device type like GPU or stuff like that. So we have options. My suggestion is let's open an issue where you where you describe your problem. And from that, we try to decide, it is something that we can discuss in an issue, give you guidance, or it's something that needs to open a proposal because the problem is bigger or stuff like that. Is that fine for you?
Okay, so I'll open the issue, and it's better to elaborate on the problem, and maybe we have to propose some suggestions, specific suggestions, and continue to discuss it. Is that okay?
Yes. In my opinion, what is really important is that you try to explain as much as better as possible what we are trying to achieve. And so we can basically help you to understand, oh, there is already something that can help you, or we need something new. This is, let me say, the first divide. If you have idea, feel free to express them. Of course, they are always welcome. But let me say, for us to help you, it is really important to understand your requirements.
So I have to show the goal.
Yes. What is the use case that you are trying to solve? What is what you are trying to achieve? The better we can understand this, the better we can help you.
Okay. Okay, I'll do that. And could you please tell me what kind of feature you mentioned? Topology?
You're
maybe
muted.
Sorry, let me show you. If you look at the cluster API book, under experimental feature, there is cluster class. This is a new feature currently alpha, and you can find this instruction how to write a cluster class, which is basically a group of templates. And then when you write a cluster class, this is here you can find an example. Then basically you can have a cluster, which is really simple, and this cluster have this topology field that allows you to drive your cluster. The idea is that just changing this class, you can target a different infrastructure. All the complexity is hidden away and managed by authors. And this is pretty powerful. You can have a variable, so you can basically pilot attributes for your machine deployment or whatever. So, and yeah, under here you find all the documentation, some example. This is the feature I was suggesting to you to look at.
So we can add their parameter for enabling GPU to here.
Yes, exactly, because cluster class allows you, for instance, to define variables. So you can define basically.
So we can freely add variable, or it's predefined.
No, you can define your own variables.
I see. So
yes, you provide an open schema for your variable, and then you can use patches. In this case, now we support JSON patches to tell how your variable change the template. And so it's and it's pretty powerful. And we have also a proposal to improve, to even improve this, which is the cluster API topology mutation hook. So it is I think that this is an area where the cluster API user interface is improving, and from my understanding of your requirement, it can really help your case, but yeah, I need to read the issue before.
Yes, I think so. It looks good, but we still need to add some variables which is specific for each platform, even if we use cluster class. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have to figure out this detail, but let me say, this provides a layer of abstraction. I'm not sure it is enough for
I think
ID.
the layer is correct.
Yes, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's enough to hiding all the difference between providers, but at least we have a place to start developing this idea, and then we will figure it out as soon as we have detail.
So if I suggesting some common parameters, adding some common parameters for enabling GPU to cluster class, is that reasonable for you?
That's, let me say, the first reaction that I got to your problem. But this is something that we have to explore. So let's open the issue, identify what are your requirements, and move on.
Okay, okay, got it. I'll open the issue and please discuss there continuously.
Okay, thank you again for coming here and sharing your problem with us. Next up is Killian.
Could I share?
Do we want to share? So let me stop. Let me stop sharing, and then I have to find Killian and make you cost. You should be able to share now.
Yeah, so this is a discussion that came up. We're currently in the process of adding new API types as part of the runtime SDK. So this is the first runtime SDK PR in code after the proposal merge. So we're adding the extension config types. The link is in the agenda. So we got some good reviews on the design of the API, including a very deep review from Joel Speed, who's been doing some API reviews recently. And one of the things that came up around kind of UX and the way our APIs work, and this reflects on the way other parts of our API are. So there was a few issues. The two main ones are we currently don't use this. So KubeBuilder allows you to tag fields as explicitly required. So there's this KubeBuilder tag. And this actually doesn't have an effect on our CRDs. So right now fields can be optional or required. Right now we're defining that similar to the way Kubernetes does. Optional fields have JSON tag emit empty. They're pointers normally, unless there's a reason for them not to be. And they also have this a specific optional tag. And then all fields that aren't optional are required. The idea here is that we would add in this specific required tag into our API types. And this would have no effect actually on our OpenAPI spec. It would only have an impact of users being able to look at it and see whether or not the field was required. There's also this sort of edge case where an entire package could be set to optional by default because the way OpenAPI or KubeBuilder work. I don't think that's a major issue, but it's still a nice to have. So I think the issue here is this is kind of an API change. It'd be slightly weird to do it for just one part of our API and leave the rest of the API on the old system. So I think the idea, and Fabrizio said this here, is to push this to the next time we're revving the API and add those tags across our API types. Yeah, anybody who has any opinions on that, comments on it, yeah, it's linked. There's the top one. So the second issue that came up was a broader issue of using QBuilder/OpenAPI. So QBuilder as a tool is able to generate these OpenAPI specs. So you add these QBuilder tags. It can do this required optional thing, but it can also do more complicated validation. So it can do things like minimum, maximum integers. It can do things like regex matching, different things like that, like making sure things are URLs, stuff like that. Today, we do all of this validation. Sorry, today we do have some of this QBuilder validation sort of randomly across the different APIs. Some of them have it, some of them don't, some of them have it in some places. But what we really rely on for validation are our webhooks. So these are Kubernetes admission webhooks that run every time you create an object, update an object, delete an object, and they just decide whether or not the object is valid. So that's where we do things like the same types of validation, minimum, maximum numbers, strings, and then some more complicated validation around. So there's some quite complicated validation. So one is things like this. We want to ignore version numbers. This is actually in defaulting. Sorry, but yeah, I'll actually get to that in a second, might be clear. So one of Joel's suggestions was that we should move whole hog to QBuilder validation and try and at least include QBuilder validation wherever we can. There's a bundle of complex things about this. One is that currently, if I'm right, kubectl will run OpenAPI validation on the client side, but won't run defaulting before that. So you end up in a situation where even with the required tag, this is an issue. Basically, things aren't defaulted. So kubectl says that your type is invalid, even though the webhook is ready to default them. We could, there's an issue open to deal with this. I think it's linked there. Yeah, so there's an issue open to deal with that, and that is probably a solvable issue. But it won't actually work for a lot of our defaulting. So that's one issue. We have an ordering problem of defaulting and validation, and then we're trying to default and validation in two different places. There's another issue around the way we kind of test things. So doing things in webhooks, we can actually unit test that. We can write more complicated unit tests. We can figure out our edge cases and stuff. Once we push stuff into the OpenAPI schema, it becomes more difficult to test. And I think that's it for the major issues. So right now, for the similar to the required stuff, for this OpenAPI validation, I think the idea is to push it for now, not do it on our extension CRD, and instead to try to tackle it later on in a more holistic way once we understand. So I've taken an AI here to kind of figure out what all the validations are and which ones we would never be able to do in OpenAPI schema, which ones we might be able to do with some sort of hacks, and which ones we will be able to do easily. But yeah, I think one of the main issues here is that there is no way to move fully to the QBuilder/OpenAPI system without changing the way we think about and implement both validation and defaulting in CAPI. So we will probably end up in a situation where we're using both. So yeah, so I think there's a lot of information on that issue. It gets into the weeds, but it'd be great to get people's opinions and feedback on whether this would help in any way, whether it's a lot of work that might not result in anything, or whether it's something that would actually be really useful for people.
Thank you, Killian. Yassine. Sorry, before moving on, we have 50 minutes left and still four item in agenda. So let's try to time box this one.
Yeah, yeah, specifically to this one, I like from experience, I don't think that like moving everything to OpenAPI like would be possible, especially when we're doing like, you know, validation that is dependent on other values, and where you have like some complex scenarios of doing validation. So I think it might make sense for like smaller things where you want to ensure that, okay, this field is a string, this field might not be empty, or such things. But as long as we start getting into a more complex validation, I think we're better off with webhooks that we can unit test.
Thank you. So first quick comment from me on this side. So first of all, I would like to thank Joel for the feedback. He is really providing value and triggering an interesting discussion. My only comment is that as I don't have a solution, I would like to better understand the problem, but as I kind of agree with Kilian's statement that we are discussing stuff which is not really, which is more a general approach than something related to the single PR. So I'm personally inclined to let the PR merge according with the current default standard that we have in the project, and then iterate on this idea, try understand, talk with Joe and understand better what he's asking, test them to understand the implication. Maybe we are understanding it wrong, and or we simply are used to do some things in a different way, and we can benefit. But I will not, let me say, I will split the work and the improvement, the PR and the improvement of our guidance. Okay, is there someone that wants to add something to this topic? Otherwise, Kilian, could you stop sharing? I go back to share my, should be this one. Okay, next up, Mike.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this quick. So I'm just, we were looking over the KubeMark provider repo, and I just want to make sure that we have like good health there with the owners or the admins of the repository. And I was wanting to reach out here just to see, like, do we have, is there like a, does anyone know if there's a link or some sort of documentation around like how we're supposed to manipulate those? Like, how would we add another admin to the repo? And then like, is there guidance around kind of like how many admins we should have on a repo, and like kind of what diversity we should have there in order to satisfy like kind of Kubernetes SIGs like health or whatever?
I'm not aware of such guidance. I don't know if Lubomir is aware. I think that the best place to ask is Contribex or the team that actually manages repositories. So,
okay, cool. I can certainly take it there. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that good sense is always a great approach for this stuff, because yeah, there are guidelines, but at the end, if I think to the Kubernetes provider, it is a really small team, so you have to make a trade-off.
Yeah, totally. I just want to make sure it's not like me as the only person who's like kind of watching things there.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Yassine.
Yeah, so yeah, I started taking a look at our providers' APIs, and it seems like we are in some cases missing some like consolidation where we're doing like provider specific approaches to things that can be probably brought up to cluster API. So I'm currently, like, just an FYI, I'm currently working on a document to list out those things. The first obvious one that I started to notice were the way we were requesting like network devices, and the second one is regarding the taggings of cluster API machines. So I think, yeah, like overall, there might be some areas where we can consolidate and abstract things in cluster API. So yeah, feel free to reach out if anyone is interested on that.
Sounds great. Thank you for sharing this. Okay, we move on to provider updates, and we have an update for the cluster API OCI provider.
Yep, just real quick, we released a new version that supports multiple regions within our cloud. So trying to get parity with everybody else.
It's great. This provider is making progress in a very short time. So congrats to all the team. And next up is Chris.
Yeah, over at the CAP-P provider, which is now Equinix Metal. If you don't know, Peace Packets, what we used to be called. We've finally got our long worked on by Jason update out that puts us on V1 Beta 1, and now you can use the newer features and stuff. Well, at least the newer API features. So there you go.
This is great work. Okay, we are at the end of our agenda. Is there some last minute topics? Otherwise, we can have a 5-minute breaks. So let's be 1, 2, 3. Happy Wednesday. See you next week.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
being here.